talk a little bit about two things, actually. One is the state of early childhood education, early childhood special education in the country now, and our need to actually fuse those two together. We've spent the last 40 years or so with systems that have approached one another and then have moved apart and then have tried to come back together again. And we're really at a place, both at a policy level and in terms of our technology and our pedagogy, that needs to bring these two sub-disciplines back together again. The other thing we need to do with early childhood education is recognize that it's actually a collective. It is not only school-based public school education. It is not only Head Start. It is far more encompassing than that. It actually includes childcare. It includes part-day programs. It includes family childcare. It includes a wide spectrum of services and supports that happen with young children and their families from about birth to 8 years of age or so. So let me talk just a little bit about that in particular, and I'll go back specifically to talk about a study that we did in Delaware, at the University of Delaware, about 6 years ago. We actually looked at all of the components of the early childhood education system. As I said, from family child care all the way up through publicly funded public school programs. And we wanted to look at their quality, we wanted to look at their inclusiveness, and we wanted to look at how they were having an impact on not just the children, but also the families as well. And not surprisingly, what we found is that there were these pockets, these wonderful, wonderful pockets of quality out there. But in general, the quality was not good. When we looked at particularly infant and toddler programs, what we ended up seeing was that even at the most basic levels, things like health and safety, there were problems, there were concerns. And if we were talking about merging true least restrictive environment, most inclusive environment settings where we were truly taking natural environments for children with disabilities, we had to address the issue of quality of child care and quality of all other types of early care and education as well. So getting a good baseline across the state, but also that clearly reflected across the country, was critical, and then moving forward so that we can enhance that quality overall. And this is where the second piece of what I want to come into play and talk about comes from, and this is from a policy level. We need good instruction, we need good programs, we need strong instructional strategies for both children with and without disabilities in early childhood education. But what we also need are the policies that are going to let those things happen. And right now what we have in place is a set of policies that are very well intentioned, that are in actuality good for many different purposes, but they're fragmented. We have a system of family support, purchase of care that comes through our child care and development block grant funds that really is looking at family work, the ability for families to be able to go out and work. So that is almost a labor and social services program. We need to help move that program back into a sense of not just the family support component of it and the employment component of it, which are very, very important goals, but also to recognize that that program has to recognize that it has some responsibility toward development as well, toward academic achievement with children, so that when we are providing the supports for families, at a policy level, we really can't only go and say that those dollars can be used anywhere for any type of early care and education. If we're going to spend public dollars, if we're going to spend taxpayer dollars, one of the things we have to think about is where is it being spent? And if we're going to spend those those early care and education dollars, we have to really spend it in places that are high quality. They're going to provide safe and healthy care for children when their parents are either in training or in education or in work, and that addresses the labor and the family support issue. But at the same time, those settings also have to have very high quality as well. Because the children that are benefiting and the families that are benefiting from those dollars, from those public dollars, are often the most vulnerable group of children. They're the children who may be living in households that have very low income, that may have limited access to good nutrition, that may have limited access to other supports. We want, if we're going to pay for their child care, for their early care experience, to make sure it's the highest quality possible so that they can actually benefit in terms of their overall development. And unfortunately, one of the things we've learned recently is that many of us used to consider early care and education programs as at least benign or good. We know now that if we're in poor programs, we actually are doing harm. Mm-hmm. We actually are putting children at risk in terms of their social development, in terms of their cognitive development. So if we're spending the public dollars, we have to make sure that we are going to spend those dollars in places that are going to foster good, positive development for children. So what we need to do is we need to do two things here right now. We need to look at the early care system across those 3 or 4 different types of funding sources that we're talking about, and that includes family-supported funding. It means the Head Start system. It means the purchase of care system, and it means the public school systems as well. We need to make sure that they are consistent with one another and that they all work toward a high-quality early care and education program. And then from the other side, from the labor policy, from the family support policy, we need to make sure that we bring together those policies that say we're only going to spend that money in places where children's development is going to be enhanced. Their social development, their communication development, their cognitive development, all of those, and that means that from a policy perspective, we need a system that will evaluate those settings. And a way to communicate to families and communicate to communities that those settings are good for individuals with disabilities and individuals without disabilities as well. This is the perfect example of a policy question and also a program question that if we enhance the quality for one of those groups, we enhance it for everybody. So from my perspective, what we're looking at is making sure that the quality is high for students with disabilities, but that also means that it becomes high for all of the children, particularly those other children who may be at risk, which includes children living in poverty, maybe children who are in foster care, children who have experienced violence in some sort of way. This is a way that we can actually address the overall system. So,
thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.